So I was asked about the media. Why is the media so negative? Why is it so full of hate? Why is it only bad news? And first off, let me tell you the first principle is I have worked in at least some sort of writing capacity for, a long, long time, probably over 15 years now, because I was writing a lot of pop culture, movie reviews, comic book shows, stuff like that, even as early as like 2003. But I will say that we've been doing more heavy news probably around 2008 or 9. And then, of course, the Dispatch was formed in 2012, the summer 2012. So I went back and I looked, and as I was looking at my own website, as I thought about why is the news negative and why is all of that sort of like that, I have to tell you the truth. The truth is that's what people read. Right? I wish I could tell you. In our site, we wanted to set up a site that would cover anything and everything, right? So if you go to the Global Dispatch, you would have found TV news, movie news, Christianity. I write a lot about that. There's a lot of opinion news. It's a wide open forum. We've had every political angle. We've had left, right, libertarian. We've done interviews, all this stuff, right? I looked back and I wanted to run through some stats to give you some ideas of how weird people are. What do they want to read? You know what they want to read? They want to read death and chaos and dismay. That's what they read, right? So I have well over 11 million, almost 12 million views. And of that, the number one story was a guy that kills himself by setting a firework off on his head. And because he was a Disney employee and looks like Gaston, that's my number one story of all time. All time. That's it. Now, admittedly, there are some pop culture stories. Again, I was really, really big into pop culture. It was literally my thing. I'm not saying I don't do it now. Everybody's asking me to really kind of parlay that pops on pop culture thing and really kind of get that going, which is fine, and I enjoy it. I love it. I can just naturally talk about those things. Our second biggest story is a story that I did about Sherlock, because I was one of the few people who was way out in front of Sherlock. It's a famous BBC show. Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman are amazing, and it's our second story. And there is like a couple others. There's a couple other pop culture type things, but most of the stories that people read, my biggest stories of all time, are like a suspicious murder case where we broke some of the details, and a Georgia murder case where we had all these suspicious circumstances of why this poor kid died. Another one is a lady that faked hate crime, right? It's this KKK thing on her garage and whatever, and it was all bogus. It was all nonsense. We broke all the stories. We were part of the early group, so these are massive stories for us, right? There's a bombing suspect. We were part of one of the groups that were identifying a bombing suspect, the ties to Saudi Arabia and all that. So I wish I could tell you that, there are I looked it up, there's almost 1,000 stories on Christianity. I'm probably linked to a lot, if not all of these stories. And there's some that are about negative things, persecution and legislation, but there's also a lot of positive things, outreaches, missionaries, interviews, musicians, music, all that, movies. They're not, there's nowhere. They're not on the radar screen, man. Tons of movie and TV, and sure, there's 2 or 3 of those, but then the fall off is great. They just disappear, right? And the stories that everybody wants to hear and talk about is what drives the business, right? You have to figure out how to pay the rent. So especially these bigger the companies, higher salaries. You have journalists. I mean, talk about starting salaries in these companies for literally just being a copywriter. You're basically just doing copy, paste, a few editorials here and there on these kinds of things. You make a few phone calls maybe. You're talking 40, 60, 70,000 a year. That's crazy money when you add up how many staff members these people. We're talking millions of dollars invested. And the news business doesn't make money. It's not a profit gearing thing. So that's why the crazy stuff is done. It's like we've made news people celebrities because it makes them more money. We create chaos and politics and all of this stuff because it gets ratings and it gets numbers, right? So I can use my own website and tell you that. I can tell you that we've had producers tell us that. I know that during the 2016 primary season, we had a CNN producer that told me off the record, wouldn't even allow me to use his name, and said, we were told to get back on Trump. The ratings were dipping. So they were literally watching things moment by moment, hour by hour, and they could see the ratings change. They would direct the conversation into a certain area. right? That's what you see. You see media companies directing the conversation for ratings and ratings alone. And I think at one point when you start creating hyperbole and that's what people get used to, then you're always trying to add more and do more. And it's just crazy. We're in this place where that's what all people want to watch and hear. And now the world is doom and gloom, and that's what you hear. And then you hear, and it creates the false narrative of, oh no, it's all just hype. And it's like sometimes the truth is in the middle. And trust me, there is no room for those of us that want to be in the middle. There's just not. It's just a really hard place. So that's kind of the truth. I'm not sure that answers this person's question, but I hope it helps you kind of understand why the news is the way it is, if that makes sense. So there's good news and bad news. People think that I don't know. People think that I like or hate either one side or the other. I will tell you this from my own personal experience, that my first run-in, my first two run-ins were with Fox. The first one was they send us photos for the promotion of one of their movies, and then they made me take it down saying I wasn't allowed to use it, and I kept telling them, you gave it to me. I don't understand what the problem is. They fought with me forever because it ranked and it took off and Google ranked it, and I couldn't get Google to take it down. It was really hard to get stuff taken down sometimes back then. This is a long time ago. Then the second time was I did a story with my daughter. She was homeschooled online. Her online program were asking her test questions and things that I thought were very inappropriate. So I wrote this article. It got picked up by Fox, and then they didn't source me. They just took the story, and then they ran it with it was on their news and everything. And I'm like, I'm the one that wrote this story. I'm the one that broke the story. There's no story without me and my daughter. And then they kept talking. I was trying to contact them to ask them about this. I go, well, no, we got it from a source. Who's the source? The source is my daughter. She has access to the program. If you don't have access, how did you verify this? I talked to the teachers. I talked to all the stuff. I did all the legwork. They updated it like 2 days later, so there's no traffic from that. I got robbed of all this exposure, time, and whatever. I was not a happy camper. So I'm not going to pretend that like one side's good or the other. Some sites don't pretend. Some news agencies don't pretend. Others play it both ways, like they think they are and they're just not. So I empathize with those of you that are frustrated, and I empathize with those of you that don't want to get into it because it is very frustrating. It doesn't bother me generally, but you have good days and bad days. But I understand. So I don't know. Tell me what you think. Give me comments in the comment field. Let me know what you guys think.